Good evening and welcome to the Lower Providence Board of Supervisors business meeting for Thursday, November 18th, 2021. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Greg, would you please call the roll?
Chairman McFarland.
Here.
Vice Chair Ekman is absent. Supervisor Koles.
Here.
Supervisor Knights.
Here.
Supervisor Sorgini.
Here.
I advise the public of two things. One is I apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties here. Hopefully all of you that are tuning in by Zoom are not having an issue. And we are having a normal meeting at this point with, again, apologies for the delay in getting started. We also had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss real estate and legal matters. No votes were taken. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is consideration of minutes of the prior meeting, monthly reports from the various departments, fiscal matters regarding authorization of payment of bills of $355,321.19, and two escrow releases, one at Landis Mill Estates and the second one at the Courts of Brynwood. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion is second. Questions or comments from the board?
I have two questions for Bill. When I was reading through, I saw that there was something related to a candidates forum on Monday, October 25th or 26th under special projects. Oh, I requested Steve Urick with Applied Video provide a team to video a candidates forum.
That request was via Joe Ferrero,
Oh, okay.
and I was just called in to just confirm with Steve that this possibly would happen, which it didn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 'cause I hadn't heard of that. And then there's one other one. Saw discussions with John Larsenese about a new wireless access point. Was that with a company or was that just with an individual?
That was part of the capital program this year, and that little box up there with the two green lights on, that's our new wireless access point.
Right?
There's 4 of them upstairs and there's 4 downstairs. I just haven't made it public yet.
Okay. Now, I was just wondering, it said asking them to install. Was there a company that installed it, or is John Larsenese the contractor?
John Larsenese and someone else from the Public Works ran the cables.
Oh, I was confusing with another John Larsenese. Okay, never mind. My question, I answered my own
John
question.
Larsenese is our employee in the Public Works.
Gotcha. Okay, my bad.
And it's using our IT consultant that I've
Okay.
always used.
Any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Next on the agenda is new business, and item 2A is consideration of a request for waiver of fence standards at 467 5th Street, and Mike Mazinski has information on that for us.
Good evening, and thank you. For the board's consideration is a fence waiver being brought today from the residents at 467 5th, that should say 5th Avenue, down in the Phoenixville section of the township, not far from where Valley Forge Park comes up through. The request is to put a fence along the side property line. For those here in the meeting room, it's this line along here. This is the side property line. The house is here. This is a wooded lot of a neighbor next door. The neighbors share a property line. This particular property is largely vacant. There is a there's obviously, and we'll see in some following slides, how the wooded area there. There are some concerns back and forth in terms of property maintenance here a little bit. And the requester of the waiver is wanting to put up a stockade fence, but with the good side facing in towards the house. And so the only consideration for the board tonight is a waiver from the standards from the fence ordinance permitting that reversal of the fence, so that the good side is facing the property owner. And if you, Bill, if you could just flip to, okay. This is a shot along part of the property line, just to kind of show you what is. This is being taken from the property owner side, and the fence would be back up in here. And I think there's one more slide. And again, so another stretch of the wooded area. Again, this fence, which I just frankly grabbed something off of the web just to show the board and those others watching what this type of fence would look like in terms of the framing. So this would be what the neighbor would say, and then the solid style fence would be what the property owner who's installing the fence would see. And the property owner is here if you have any questions for her.
Okay, would you like to approach the podium, please, ma'am? And just for the record, please give us your name and your address, even though it's already here.
My name is Linda Paragrassi. My address is 467 Fifth Street.
Thank you. Just one question I might have is, the reversal, is the adjoining neighbor aware of your request to reverse this?
No, he's very uncooperative with me. I tried to put up a fence working with him because I had fence, but he was always saying I was harassing him. I spoke to him maybe once in 30 years. He lives, the portion of the woods is probably 2 acres from, so you can't even see his house from my house. It's all wooded lot, which he does not maintain. He had a fence up there prior, and it was deteriorating, so he took it down. I had the township involved, but I always maintained the ivy that was growing on that fence.
And because it's unimproved wooded lot, I'm just curious, why do you want to put a fence there as opposed to just leaving it open?
Because I don't want to look at his mess over there. And the deer are very rampant, so it stops. But like I said, he doesn't maintain it at all.
Okay, so it's just an unsightly appearance and you'd rather not look at it?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
And is there trash or material, or is it mostly just unmaintained woods and ivy and growth?
Well, when the township made him take down his deteriorating fence, he just threw it in the woods.
Okay.
Tree falls, it just lays there. When I bring to his attention the dead trees, he'll have it cut and just let it lay there. Nothing is ever done
Maintained.
with
Okay.
it. Like I said, English ivy is really, really bad, but he doesn't maintain it at all.
Okay. And if you were to flip it, maybe he wouldn't notice?
He
But-
wouldn't, they wouldn't say it, yeah.
And the reason I say that is, what happens with these things, right, is if for some reason he's disgruntled, it then, poor Mike gets the brunt of it, or our staff gets the brunt of it, so I want to be sensitive to the potential. I can understand why you would want to have the good side facing in, but that would be my biggest concern, is that it could blow back on you and cause angst, but also on our staff when someone comes in because we approve something, but they're the ones who are here during the day that have to take those calls, and I want to be sensitive to that. So that would be my biggest concern, is just that, is if it were to cause more problems with that neighbor.
I don't think it would. Like I said, they keep to themselves. I never see them. So I don't think it would cause any problems, because I cleaned it up. I cleaned up the property line before, and I cleaned it up this time after he took down his fence. I cleaned up all the stuff that was laying there.
And I'm looking at the diagram here, which you can't see, and it shows 4 sides encircled with a blue line. Will the fence be on all four sides of the property or just on the
No,
disgruntled neighbor?
It's just on the one side, the wooded side. I currently have a post and rail fence around my property, but he had his fence up prior to me putting up the post and rail. So it's just on the 240 feet on the wooded side.
Okay, and then I'm just trying to orient myself. So if I was standing with Fifth Avenue, Fifth Street at my back,
Okay?
and looking towards Walnut Hill Circle, then the fence would be on the right side of the property.
Correct.
Okay, okay. And you say you tried to talk with the neighbor about the fence, but he didn't want to engage.
Correct.
So the possible concern there is, if he's uncooperative and this happens, he might say, hey, the fence was put in the wrong way.
That's why I'm requesting the waiver.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to figure out, I think, is along the same lines as Gary. We're talking about the side that faces the large expanse of woods, correct?
Correct.
So the fence, based on what I can see here, is it even likely seen or visible from the homeowner, from the home, the neighbor?
No.
Or is it, so the question is, do the deer and the squirrels get to see the good side, or does the homeowner?
I would see the good side. They wouldn't see anything because of
Right,
the
because
woods.
it's through the woods.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure we're not creating a precedent here, because normally the idea of a fence and keeping the good side out is that, good fences make good neighbors. So, but in this particular circumstance, the good side or the bad side, quote unquote, facing out is really not facing right up against the neighbor's home. It's facing a large expanse of woods, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You can't see their house. Like if you're standing on my back porch and the
Right.
woods are right here, you can't even see their house because it's all woods.
That's the way it appears in
Mm-hmm.
this Google picture. Okay, thank you.
How about the other neighbors on the other side?
They're great.
But do they know, are they going to be, because would you have it the same way on that side for the fence, or is the fence only on the one side?
It's only on that one
Oh,
side.
all right,
Yeah,
that
it's
makes it
only
a
on the
little
wood
easier.
side,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, got it. The deer might go around though.
I have post and rail all around. So, yeah, so the only way I don't have post and rail is on the wood side because he had a fence previous there.
Sorry, that makes more sense, thank
Yeah.
you.
Are there fence options that look good on both sides?
I didn't go that route, and the reason why I didn't go that route is because of the ivy. There's no way I can go over there and maintain the ivy from growing on that fence because it's his property. So I can't maintain it, and that English ivy, that's everywhere. It's even growing up on his trees. Like I said, his fence there prior, I always trimmed it because it grew over the fence, and I just trimmed it on my side so it didn't take over my property, my ground. So I always hedge clipped it, but the ivy just totally ate his previous fence. Now, granted, his previous fence was up there for 30 years. So, I mean, it was pretty old, and the ivy did take it over.
I would be most comfortable approving something like this if you got the permission from the neighbor.
He won't engage with me at all.
Mike, have you had any interactions with that neighbor, any concerns, because I mean, like I said, you're going to get you'll get the call if anything.
Not directly about this fence, but we have a history of property maintenance issues with this particular neighbor, and he's not been the most cooperative. I mean, we've eventually gets compliance. I don't recall us having to arise to the level of a court hearing, but it is. I don't disagree with the characterization.
Do you have concerns of us putting this condition in, I guess would be the only other thing?
In the grand scheme of things, no.
Would you consider, I mean, the fact that the neighbor's property doesn't look good is sort of irrelevant in my view, whether it's okay to flip it. Also, the fact that it's, far away from the standpoint that, he might go walking through and, the fences are supposed to look good to the other side. I'm just wondering to prevent any, and it sounds like there's a level of non-engagement or animosity with this neighbor. I'd feel much more comfortable if if the neighbor was okay with having the bad side of the fence facing his or her property, for me to vote in favor of it.
If I can counteract you, the only thing that is nice is when you come down Fifth Street, you'll see the good side of the fence because nobody coming up Fifth Street will see the bad side because it's all woods. So if you're coming down Fifth Street, heading down to the park, well, what is that, Washington Avenue? You'll be able to see the good side facing anybody coming down, and you won't see the ugly side.
You sold me.
And no other questions from the board? I'd ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public other than yourself? Bill, any comments from Zoom? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Great, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for coming in and talking with us.
Thanks.
Item 2B on the agenda is consideration of a pension investment policy statements, and Interim Township Manager Greg Schuster has that information. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little bit of an explanation on this item before I turn it over to our investment advisor, which is Rich Reitzer with CBiz INR and his team. Our pension, and we're talking about three different funds here. That's the non-uniform pension, the uniform pension, and the post-retirement benefits fund. Those are three particular funds we're talking about here. They are governed by an investment policy statement. This statement governs how this money is invested. And it's important to have this statement in place so that our advisor, when market opportunities arise, can make changes. For instance, weight a little more heavily on stocks or a little more heavily on bonds, depending on what's going on in the marketplace. When I was reviewing the investment policy statement and attending the investment or the pension advisory committee meetings and looking over the statements, I saw that the current investment policy statement specifies a 65-35% split, which is 65% weighted towards equity, 35% towards fixed. There is a plus or minus 10% in there, so you can overweight or underweight depending on what's going on in the marketplace. However, what's been going on over the last few years is that the allocation has been weighted at 70% equity, which of course is within the investment policy statement guidelines, however, is not the actual target. I thought it would be appropriate to bring this to the board for a discussion with the advisor so that you could have full awareness of what's going on. And in fact, if you're comfortable keeping it at 70%, make that the official target with a +5, -10% range. So that's the reason that I felt the need to bring this to you today. And with that, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to CBiz INR to go ahead and provide a little more information on that for you to ask questions.
Okay, thank you, Greg. This is Mike Lacken, president of CBiz INR. We've had the privilege of working with your committee and your team since the end of 2014, and we're really known as the all-market, low-cost indexed investment provider in the Commonwealth. And as I said, have been privileged to work with you and your team and your actuary since late 2014. When we first came in, and even during the original process, when you were reviewing investment advisory firms, we explained in our process, our ultimate goal is to try to hit your assumed interest rate over the long run. So in using that all market approach, what we're doing is trying to target what is the least amount of risk we can take in order to get the highest rate of return closest to your assumed interest rate. When we first teamed up with the township and your committee, we showed capital market assumptions that would achieve that return that the actuary was using in the assumption at that point in time. And your assumed interest rate was higher than it currently is now. Your assumed interest rate now is at 7%. And when we come in each year, we show what we expect to get. So when we first came in, we showed the pension committee that in order to try to hit your assumed interest rate, you had to have roughly 70% in equities and 30% in fixed income. I'm just going to quickly bring up and share my screen. Hey, Greg, can you allow me to share my screen?
You have to speak to a higher authority, Bill. We're working on it. 1 second.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I can kind of talk through the numbers.
Hey, can I ask a clarifying question quickly?
Yes.
When you're saying interest rate, do you mean rate of return, or do you mean discount interest rate, or what? Can you just define that term for me?
Yeah, on the assumed interest rate, that's what the actuary is using when he does the valuation. And he's using that based on what the plan is expecting to get in a rate of return over the long run. So
Okay.
when you determine the funding level and the municipal minimum obligation or contribution, what he's doing is saying that the pension plan is going to obtain a 7% return over the long run. So in essence, the discount rate. So now that was a lot higher. You know, what we're very proud of is when we first came in with this team and your actuary, the assumed interest rate and the funding levels, the assumed interest rate was much higher, and the funding level was much lower. Due to that teamwork with your group, the actuary, and then the investment performance, we worked together to be able to lower that assumed interest rate and increase the funding level. But things have changed, and even though your assumed interest rate has come down, our expectations from that 70% equity, 30% fixed income, as Greg described, have also come down. So where we were expecting to get more like a 7% return when we were first hired back in the beginning of 2015, we're now only expecting, based on how far the market has come, we're now only expecting to get about a 6% overall return from that same 70-30 mix. But that is still within shooting distance of what your actuary is willing to accept before he would recommend to lower the assumed interest rate. So that 70-30 mix would be much more, there's a much greater probability of obtaining your 7% assumed interest rate than if we use, say, a 60-40 or even a 65-35. Now, the reason the investment policy statement sets 65% equities, 35% fixed income is prior to our involvement, your investment policy statements stated 65% equities, 35% fixed income. And we recommended the 70-30 mix and recommended that the investment policy statement be changed. And a previous township manager wanted to use the same investment policy statement ranges and basically said, well, you can go out of that range if you wish, but we still want to use the same target of 65% equities, 35% fixed income. We believe, as Greg also pointed out, and also would be more in line with what the actuary is reporting on the financials and what you're required from the government accounting standard boards to compare what we expect to get in a return versus what you're using in the assumed interest rate in the valuation, it would make sense to make the target more in line with the 70-30 mix that we're using, and be more in line with what the actuary is using and your auditor is using in the financials. And you have benefited tremendously from the most important decision we've made with your group and your team, number one, has been to allocate more towards equities over that time frame. I'm sorry, Greg, I don't know who you passed the ability for us to share the screen. Can we do that yet, or?
I've made you a co-host, Mike. So if you're able to share something, and typically we don't have that enabled, but I made you a co-host, so can you share something from your screen?
Great. I'm going to share it right now. It's saying this will stop others from screen sharing. Do you want to continue? I'm saying yes.
There you go.
Okay.
All you have
So
to do,
you see my screen now?
yes, I can see your screen. You just have to bring up your PDF or whatever you're going to show.
Okay. Yeah, got it up, but you guys can't see it, right?
Not
We,
yet.
we see a list of files.
Oh, okay. Let me try this again. There we go. Okay, so this is as of year to date. And when we first came in towards the end of 2014, we were showing expected rate of return of roughly, just above where your assumed interest rate was. So the assumed interest rate was a lot higher than the 7%. We leaned more towards equities, as Greg said, 70% towards equities, 30% fixed income. That was the most important decision we made because since inception, you've had a 9% return. Equities have been up around 10%. Fixed income or bonds have been up around 3%. So that heavier 10% more allocation towards equities dramatically benefited the overall performance since inception. Also, what's happened over the short run is, last year, the pension plan was up over 15%, the year before up over 21%. Now, we don't expect the stock market to continue with the same double-digit numbers or 10% returns that historically you've seen it provide. So it's even more important to lean more towards equities to try to get to your assumed interest rate. The nice thing is, so far year to date, you're up 13.33% when your target is 7%. So what the discussion, the more important discussion that we really want to have, your valuation that the actuary does is based on every other year. So you just did a valuation based on the 2019 and 2020 performance where you had over a 36% return, which enabled the actuary to change some assumptions like change the mortality table, but it also increased your funding level and give you a cushion because you're using asset smoothing. So your market value on the funding level has gone up dramatically. Since you're using asset smoothing, we have a cushion if we're using the 70-30 mix asset smoothing is now making your assets look much lower than what the market value is. Therefore, giving us cushion that if the stock market does come down, you have a pretty significant cushion based on the fact that we did allocate 70% to equities since we've been involved with you guys. The other question we're getting a lot from our pension clients is, well, we expect, there should be a correction. When's a correction going to occur? And in reality, an over 10% correction happens every year. So you can't time the market. But what we do is we always take advantage of whatever asset class is going down. So we're always buying cheap. So the three things that our clients always remember is, they own everything through the index Vanguard funds and iShares that we're buying. But number two is they're always buying the asset class that goes down. So what we're telling clients is we fully expect the market to correct by 10% every year. And eventually we're going to look smart by selling bonds and buying stocks cheap. And the biggest example I can give is back in 2020 when the market was down over 30%. And we're meeting with your committee for the first time in a Zoom meeting. And I'm explaining to them that we're going to sell bonds and move back to the 70-30 mix because the stock allocation fell to 50%. And we bought stocks at a 30% discount when it was very difficult for most institutions to do that. We were able to do that because of the efficiency of the index program. To kind of keep it simple, in order to get anywhere near the 7% assumed interest rate that your actuary is currently using for the township and the valuation, the 70-30 mix is really the highest we would go on the risk profile in order to try to get close to that return. What we expect to get from the 70% equities, 30% fixed income is roughly 6. So the real prudent discussion that we need to continue to have, that your committee and you as the board, if I was to stand up on my soapbox as a part of your team, it would be that we diligently did the opposite of kicking the can down the street, and we worked hard to get the assumed interest rate down, the funding level up, and in the next valuation, which would be after next year, if we have an above average, above 14% total for the 2 years, our discussion should really be about lowering your assumed interest rate from 7 to 6. And that investment policy statement is the guideline that gives us the ability to really target the strategy that we're using and not really use an investment policy statement where we're going outside the target, but we're staying within the ranges. So we 100% agreed with Greg's suggestion to revisit the investment policy statement. We welcomed that, and that's why you have the new investment policy statements before you tonight.
All right, thank you, Mike. So,
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Any questions from the board for Mike? That was a lot to digest in about 10 minutes. And I'm just making some assumptions. We don't have a list of the equity investments, so you mentioned these are all index mutual funds. Is that generally correct?
That's correct.
Didn't we get those
Sure.
from?
Quick. So what we're doing is blending. So we use an all market index approach, but we are strategic. So we do lean towards certain asset classes and we do buy asset classes cheap on a regular basis. But these are the holdings that you currently have. Vanguard exchange traded funds and some BlackRock index funds from iShares as well.
And those types of funds are less volatile than, say, large caps or even small caps in a downturn.
When you blend them all together, that question is, you have more diversification. So typically over time, more diversification leads to less volatility. And then it also gives us the ability to always be buying, we have a tremendous amount of asset classes that we're always going to be buying an asset class on sale.
And if we were to lower the 7% target to 6%, then the township's commitment to funding would go up, would it not?
Well, that would depend, it could go up, but that would depend on what happened. So what happened over the last 2 years is we got over a 36% return. So because the investment performance was much higher than the 14% that that your actuary was using, your costs actually came down, even though you changed other assumptions like your mortality table. So it depends on the cost of benefits and what the return is over the next 2 years. So the time to revisit the assumed interest rate will be in the next valuation, which will be for the years 2021 and 2022. You're already, so if you ended today, you're 6% higher for the 1 year than the assumed interest rate. So there might not be a cost to lower the assumed interest rate, but if we have a negative year next year, there could be. But the neat thing is, because you've had a 9% average annual return since our inception, you have built up a cushion because of the asset smoothing of about 9% in the police pension plan, meaning market value is much higher than the actuarial value that you're using to determine the funding level. So because of that important decision we made back at the end of 2014, we have a pretty nice cushion on the smoothing side to deal with market downturns in the real near future.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Mike?
I was just going to say, the thing we're voting on tonight, though, is to change the allocation from 65-35 to 70-30. And, I think that's a good thing to do, because if we adopted 65-35, we'd be buying bonds also potentially to hit that allocation when they're priced high, and with inflation, they might decrease in value. So I think it's a good move.
But structurally, the 70% or higher, this change would allow the investment to go higher than 70%, correct?
Well, the way it's structured in there has a plus 5% on there, but I believe they would not do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that I was told your platform wouldn't do that. So I think if you want to eliminate the plus 5% and cap it at 70%, that's something you certainly can do. Mike, if you had an opinion on that.
Well, I would say I like, Greg, what we discussed earlier, not having it, keeping where it is now, the investment policy statement, because you could still, even though we're extremely efficient, we can go ahead and rebalance right away. You have, usually when you have corrections, they're in a pretty significant amount. So given the range of the 5%, we would target the 70%. If it gets up to a certain range, we would knock it down real quick. But the program is so efficient, we would target the 70%. If it got anywhere near the 75%, we'd move right back to the 70. But to hardwire it in at 70%, you would be that there are market movements that would make that a negative. And the biggest one that I would give is, anytime, normally markets don't move real efficiently. They don't move up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% each quarter. So Greg, although we're extremely efficient on the rebalancing and trading, I would still recommend staying with the current guideline.
All right, so if I can pare back what I just heard, that if and when the correction does happen, you'd be looking to take advantage of that when hopefully you're at the low end, buy up some stocks, and at that point you could hit the 75% and then rebalance shortly thereafter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
So the consideration before the board then is to change the policy to read 75% or 70?
It is 70% equity, 30% fixed. The 70% has a +5 -10% range, and I believe the fixed had a plus or minus 10%. Is that correct?
Okay,
That's correct.
Yes, that's what mine shows.
okay, so can we have a motion to change the policy to,
I actually had a question real quick.
oh, go ahead.
Thank you for the explanation. I can tell you enjoy this. There's a review quarterly in here, but it says the plan sponsor reviews it. Is there anything that triggers an alert to us if there's some large move? And I realize stocks go up and down, so I don't know that I'd be all concerned about it. But is there any kind of safeguard for that, or we put our trust in them and that's it, just the annual?
So there is a quarterly report, and it is in there, a report where they are in comparison with the target range. So, and you do get that quarterly report
I
distributed.
thought
to
I
you.
had seen it. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there's also, I apologize too, Jerry and Greg get a monthly custodial trust statement from a third party, TD Ameritrade. So they actually get a monthly report as well, just based on the breakdown. But Greg's right, the quarterly within the ranges, that quarterly performance report is also, we have the quarterly meeting, but they also get the hard copy emailed on the performance report quarterly.
Thank you.
So can we have a motion then to change the investment policy to allow for 75% plus 5 minus 10? 70% plus 5 minus 10?
Yeah,
And 30% plus or minus 10?
I'll make that motion, and I'm assuming it also includes all of the target allocations that are in here, in the document in front of us?
Correct, you'd be adopting the investment policy statements as a whole.
Yes, okay. I'll make that motion to adopt the investment policy statement as a whole that's in line with what Chairperson McFarland just stated.
And I'll second.
Motion is second. Questions or concerns from the board? Questions or concerns from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Mike, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the privilege and thank you for your service.
Next on the agenda is item 2C, authorization to advertise the trash bid, and Interim Manager Greg Schuster has that information. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now on to something much more exciting. At the last meeting, the board did give feedback on the draft bid package, along with certain questions that was posed as per my memo. That has been incorporated in the latest draft and has been sent to the board. There have been some minor changes since then. We have also received some very minor feedback from another potential bidder about the form of some of the performance bonds and surety language, which I've reviewed with the solicitor, and we will likely make a minor change there. But other than that, it is with the changes that you asked me to make at the last meeting. Again, hoping to move this forward so that we can advertise this properly. I will remind the board that the current contract ends at the end of February, so we would like to get this bid out as quick as possible and resolve this so we have plenty of time to work with either the current vendor or a new vendor, depending on the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. The board has the document in front of you and had the opportunity to review it prior to that. Do I have questions or comments on the document?
The surety language, this isn't different from what you emailed to us, correct?
Yes, we just got it the other day, and the 2 or 3 points that were brought up was, I think, who could sign one of the bonds. There was some language in the draft performance bond that's typically insurance language, and we concurred shouldn't have been in there. And there was a third, do you remember what the third item was?
It all had to do with the bond.
Yeah.
The language in the bonds, so.
We concurred with everything they said. It wasn't really anything substantive. It just, there were things that should not have been in there. Oh, it was the language in that they wanted to, the bid bond.
Right.
They just wanted to use an industry standard bid bond rather than have some of the language that was in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, the performance bond, and I'm looking at it, had some language about holding the beneficiary from all costs, damages, and expenses, which is really sort of like a personal injury, and not a performance bond is the bond. Oh, I guess I should turn that on. And I think they're good to go. They were good, all good comments.
And then I had a question about the $20 million surety bond, and can you just explain that for the record? Because I did have concerns that might exclude certain bidders, and I just wanted to make sure that it was, and Greg had explained it's on page IB 13 or 9.
Yeah, so that has nothing to do with each individual bidder. And reading the language says, each bid shall be accompanied by an officer-signed consent of surety from an approved surety company that is licensed to conduct business in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and listed in the most recent revision of U.S. Treasury Department Circular 570 with its unwritten limitation therein stated at least equal to $20 million and AM Best rating of A1 minus or higher. Again, this has nothing to do with each bidder. This is just ensuring that the institution which is providing the surety is a reputable organization and can back that bond. It's not just someone down the street signing a paper.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted kind of to have that assurance. All right, thank you.
So I'm looking at the letter from one of the vendors that provided some input on the bid, and there's some, reasonable points raised in the letter as they relate to putting together a good business proposal. And I'm curious if these have been factored in to the document in front of us that we're talking about advertising tonight.
Can you be specific on which ones?
There's a number of comments that, the option allowing homeowners to choose either once or twice per week pickup makes no sense. How's a bidder to know before the bid how many and how to bid on it? They're raising some issues related to the pricing.
So you're referring to the Mascaro letter of November 10. I can go through that point by point if you'd like.
I think that would be helpful if you agree.
Okay.
Let's go through them point by point, Greg.
Yep, so the first comment, that was about the choice once or twice a week. And again, this was added by consensus of the board at the last meeting.
Yep.
I concur with that comment. I don't think you're going to see anything meaningful, but it was pushed to add that in as an option. I don't think it causes any harm by putting the option in, but from a business standpoint, I can't see how they would put together a rational bid by not knowing how many customers there are going to be. Additionally, if they're sending, if there's only one customer on the street that day, they're still sending the truck and the crew. So it's really not, I would imagine their costs remain the same. So I concur with their comment, but I don't see any harm in leaving it in the bid.
So if it's left in the bid, we still have an option for someone to propose once a week or twice a week, but not the hybrid.
Oh, yeah, so each option is a standalone silo. And you can pick, once you choose a silo, then you have to choose the lowest bidder in that silo.
Okay.
But you can pick whichever silo you want.
So if we find one of those silos, for the reasons mentioned here, has very high pricing, it's irrational because we're trying to cover the risk, we can easily just say, well, okay, we're not going to go for this silo, we're going to look at one or the other because they have more rational pricing.
Correct. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think you'd see actually higher pricing. I think the worst you could do is just someone saying, well, I'm going to put the same price in there for twice a week service, because that's the maximum I would get. That's what I think is actually going to probably happen.
Fair enough, yep.
So that's I agree with the comment. Don't see any harm in leaving it in the bid.
Okay.
The second comment, we concurred with and we adjusted the language in the bid. The third comment, we concurred with the language, and the solicitor, concurred with their comment. The solicitor did give me new language to put in there, which is not a carte blanche, for termination at convenience, but there has to be some reasoning behind it. I don't know the exact, I'd have to look at the page, but the solicitor did provide that language.
Greg, can you summarize each one since it is a public meeting?
Oh, I'm
They
sorry,
can't
yes.
see what we're saying.
So in the comment prior was just adding, there was a place in the bid, this was existing language, about the bidder describing conditions or limitations or explaining things, and the feedback was, well, the township should tell what it is. So we concurred with that and we adjusted the language. However, there's still a spot in there to give some description, not that that's a defining factor in how the bid is awarded, but just so we know when looking at these bids how it's actually going to occur. The third comment,
Greg, before you move on that, if I may, just a clarification on, with regard to the notice, which is what we're discussing, correct? Notice of termination?
well, that's the third comment, yes.
Is that coming up now?
Yep, that's what I was moving to.
I thought we were there. Go ahead.
So the third comment, there was language, existing language that said the township may cancel this contract with a 30-day written notice, basically for any reason or no reason, and they objected to that, which makes sense, of course. So the solicitor did provide alternate language, which, do you remember what it is off?
Yeah, I can read it.
Thank you.
And this language was in the language that the comment generated was in the last bid, so it wasn't changed, but it was changed to read, the township may at any time and for any reason cancel this contract upon 90 days written notice when the township determines the termination is in the best interest of the township and its residents. I mean, the 30-day cancellation, you're not going to get another hauler in to pick that up. So if you cancel it in 30 days, you're sort of out there. So we lengthened the time. We still included it for any time for any reason, but modified it by saying it has to be in the best interest of the township. What's in there now is what's called a termination for convenience clause, which is pretty typical in public contracts, but this is sort of unusual because you've got an ongoing service that if you're going to terminate on 30 days notice, then you're going to have a problem without having time to get another hauler in. So what I read is what I changed it to, and it's in here.
Just on that point then, for clarification, determining that termination is in the best interest of the township and its residents, I mean, that's a fairly broad statement. So would there typically, from a legal perspective, have to be some demonstrated failures with regard to the current service in order for that to have any effect?
Correct.
So then it is not one that could be taken arbitrarily. It would have to have proof of failure to perform.
There would
in some area.
have to be some reason why it would be in the best interest of the township, and it would be, lack of service. It could be, problems with employees that are working for the provider. And then the township would have to make that determination at a public meeting, and the operator would have the opportunity to address that. So it's It's broad. I mean, I don't know that you really want to define this and turn it into a, a specific hearing requirement, but, you would have to make, it would be a significant step to take. I mean, you're going to terminate the trash collection for everybody in the township, so it's got to be a serious issue, and, the way it was written with 30 days written notice, really for any reason, I don't like the color of your trucks, whatever, common clause in public contracts, but for this, the ramifications of just having a 30 days notice would be a problem.
So from a practical standpoint, a vendor would look at this and say, well, this is not a high risk of termination, meaning, that for relatively minor infractions, this
Right.
contract could end, which if that were the perception, I would expect the pricing to reflect that. Meaning it's a 5-year contract, but if I'm only going to have, if I'm going to get kicked out for almost no reason, my price is going to change.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But remember, this termination for convenience clause was in the last bid document
Yeah.
that nobody objected to and everybody bid on. So
Okay.
I don't, there needed to be, it was raised as an issue, and I think we addressed it. We addressed it adequately, and I don't think it's going to scare anybody off.
Okay, moving on to the fourth comment, which was about insurance coverage, where the bidder actually wanted to see an increase in some of the automobile liability insurance. All the insurance-related information in there was provided to us by our insurance carrier, Divot, so we decided to stick with their recommendation. We could obviously increase the limits. Our insurance carrier doesn't feel the need to, and increasing the limits could prevent other bidders potentially from taking part. But again, we went with our recommendation from our insurance carrier. Comment 5 was about the fines/penalties. The due process procedure really has, there's nothing in there about due process. It is a unilateral action by the township, and my understanding is that's the way it's been. Their second comment didn't make any sense, which is they're asking, why is there a need for a $10,000 escrow account when they could just simply be deducted from the contractor's monthly bill? I think they may have confused us with another township, because some townships do actually collect the fee themselves and pay the vendor. In this case, they bill the residents directly, so we are not paying them monthly, so which necessitates the escrow.
We rejected comment 5.
Yes. Comment 6, this is kind of similar to the earlier comment that I made. They're asking for more specificity. So again, we did put some more specificity in there about what we expect in the per bag program. We still leave some space there for people to describe a few details, just so you know about how it would happen. But we did specify that it would be a certain number of gallons on the bags and sold in lots of, I think it was 20, but we added that language to what it current is today. Comment number 7.
Did we address anything in the per bag related to the comment made by Mascaro that one vendor might choose a less sturdy bag than another?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Thank you.
And sorry, just one other clarification on that. Is there anywhere stated with regard to the per bag, how many bags per pickup would be allowed?
No, you pay per bag.
But you can put as many as 10 out at one pickup if you wish, even though you pay for
Well,
it.
the 10-bag limit is for yard waste, so technically there is no limit. But if you're going to keep doing that, you're going to be paying a lot more than what you...
So the pricing is the practical.
Yeah, and just for reference, we did ask Mascaro. I believe the number was 92 residents participate in the per bag program. So there's not a whole lot of them, but there's some. Okay, what was I just comment numbers? Comment number 7 relates to the cart contents only bid. The first paragraph, they the way they read it was actually misinterpreted, and so I clarified the language. It's not that they were we were gonna tell them one or two. It was just, well, the vendor, if they want to put out one, if they want to put out two, the vendor could have that choice. So we changed language to say minimum of one 64-gallon toter, which satisfies that first comment. The second comment is just basically saying that they don't believe a cart-only option is appropriate for the township. I will note that there are some bidders out there that specifically need this as part of their operation. Automation, so there are some bidders that use fully automated vehicles that only have one person in the vehicle, and they need the very specific cart. Everything has to be in the cart, and the arm comes over the top and dumps it over. So for that model to work, this option would have to be included. But again, it may not be the right option for the township. It'll be one of those silos, and if at the end of the day you say that silo is not for us, you can discard it and move on to one of the other ones. Moving on to the 8th comment. It references the recycling ordinances, which have just been updated. So yes, they will be provided. Actually, we changed the reference to just say current ordinances, but we will attach the draft or the ordinance which is currently advertised for you to adopt at your next meeting. Comment 9.
Just a question on that. If it's stated as current ordinance, does that mean current ordinance at the time the contract is signed, or current ordinance like in the future if we modify it?
Well, at the time the contract gets signed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be adopted by then.
If we later change the ordinance, the contract goes to the contract is tied to the ordinance that was in place at the time the contract was signed.
No, if it's updated, they're going to have to comply with an updated ordinance too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The 9th comment, which refers to pages CR1 through CR9, those are just collection routes, and those have been included in the back. The next one, 10th comment, was about supplying all homes with a new container at the start of the contract. And that was a specific request that the board had made. First of all, if someone other than Mascara were to win, they'd have to put out the new ones anyways. But if you want to go ahead and change that, you certainly can. So I understand where they're coming from. Are there toters out there which are perfectly serviceable at the moment? Absolutely. It's just this was what the board wanted, but if you want to change that, we certainly can.
Well, with apologies for not being present at the last deliberation on this, I'm questioning what the value of this is. First, several things. One is it environmentally, you're going to be taking reasonably good totes out of service and doing something else with them, and you're going to be ordering and building 12,000 plastic totes, which in the case of one of the vendors wouldn't be necessary, and I'm not sure, because I don't know the business, whether or not new vendors have to, create new totes for every job they take on, because every bid that goes into a town would have this same condition. There's somebody collecting trash presently using totes, and then we're going to have a new contract in that town, and there are going to be bids from both the incumbent as well as the additional ones, but I don't believe that those towns do, and I wouldn't agree that they should, require all new totes for the beginning of the service. The second point I would make on this is that, and this may be affecting other people, but I don't know with the supply line conditions we're in that anybody could get 12,000 totes by the end of February, or actually before then, so that they could put them out by the end of February. They're not going to order them today. They're not going to order them a month from now. So they're not going to have very long to get that kind of quantity at that kind of quality delivered. And again, they're all plastic, which we would prefer not to be generating more plastic products if it's not necessary. I don't understand the reasoning behind this.
I think for the biggest concern, because I agree with the waste that would come in if they were replacing toters that are already in good shape if Mascaro is to be the successful bidder. My biggest concern is how would we structure the contract so that they don't automatically get an advantage because they're not pricing new toters, whereas everybody else is. So I would want to somehow have them separate that cost so that it was not lumped into the overall price. Passed on, like, I don't know how you do that, is my only concern, is how do you make it fair with the toters for the other bidders?
I'm sorry, I don't know how you would do that either. I'd agree that the incumbent would have a price advantage in this case. I don't know how to get around that other than if you want to acquire new toters from whoever wins the bid.
I mean, one way I've seen to get around that is you would have them all price the pickup service independent of the tote replacement and have a separate line item for the cost of tote replacement. So at least we could look at, the total cost issue would still be there, but at least you could see what the ongoing service costs are, irrespective of the tote cost. And that would let you normalize it.
Well, but that would be worked into the bid. So you're going to get a bid from each bidder, and it's going to be one, per item, it's going to be one number. So,
And I'm saying the way to address this topic, we do it in our business, is we would break out the cost of the recurring service from the cost of the one-time tote replacement. So there'd have a line item for, like, the cost of the pickup service is going to be whatever, $100 per quarter, and the one-time tote replacement would be $70 per tote.
how would you award the bid? On what basis?
We would have the information to make that decision.
You have to have a basis for awarding the bid. And it could be on, hey, we're just going to award it on the ongoing costs and just separate out the total costs, in which case, don't be surprised if you get some strange numbers, or you can do it all in. I'm just saying there has to be something that's identified as how you're going to award the bid.
But it's really no benefit to the current provider because they've already incurred the cost. So whether they incurred it during the last contract or the new contract, whoever bids on it has to incur the cost of that. So it's really not, you could say that it's a benefit to the incumbent hauler, but at the same time, they already incurred the cost.
Yes.
So
We've already passed that cost to the town, to the residents, conceivably, right? We've already paid for those toters.
But then
through
it's
our
fair market
service.
here, so then the bidders have an opportunity to figure out how to adjust that accordingly. My bigger concern was in the event that it happened, the successful bidder happened to be the current hauler. It's really the replacement of damaged containers I was most concerned about. So something to the effect of there needs to be an I know that it says in the event of damage to a container, it is the bidder's responsibility to provide a new receptacle at no cost to the homeowner, just ensuring that there is some way, that the bidder has an identified process for that.
And again, then why are we bidding this? We might as well go sole source because we're creating a situation where it's not a fair bid because the incumbent is going to have an advantage, right? And I'm interested in a fair process, and however we get there is what I need the solution for. But I'm not interested in setting up a situation where it's a gimme because of toters. And we need a legal solution to address this. And I don't have anything against the current hauler, but I certainly want a fair bid and I want to be able to look at more than one person for the residents of this township, more than one vendor. So John, what are our legal options?
Well, I mean, just your point would suggest that nobody who is not an incumbent ever gets a contract. And I don't know that that's true. I think many people come in and bid contracts that did not have the trash contract and are successful.
I guess it depends on whether the cost of replacing 12,000 toters.
What's that number?
Yeah, what's that number?
That's the number that you need to know. If you want to break it out,
Yeah,
I think you need to know that number. So
Like 1.2 million, $100 a toter, if I was to guess.
how much?
$100 a toter? More? Lower?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody has to basically use the same number, if the incumbent wins, if everybody's going to either deposit or, you know, deposit the money or buy the new toters, either way, if everybody's using the same number for the cost of that, then that number's irrelevant, right? The low number's gonna be whatever the numbers are that are left over. So how do we get that number?
But then if you make everybody replace all the toters, we're wasting, we're
Yeah,
gonna be
there's
throwing
a-
away good toters.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's a tough situation, but again, I'm just have concerns about creating a situation where it's not an even playing field.
Well, let's say that, put the cost of the toters aside, and the incumbent comes in, and with that being equal among all the bidders, they're the low bidder, right? Have them deposit the money that it would cost to replace all them. So you have the money, the township holds that money, and over the course of the 5 years, the toters all get replaced. Mascara's toters, if they're get all replaced because you have the money in escrow to do it. You've got to create a situation where that number is the same for everybody. Whatever the number is, I don't know whether it's $100 or $50 or $200.
Probably easy enough to find out.
But
I've seen
that
it
should be
online.
pretty easy to find. Greg, if we make that, all bidders will either, you either have to replace it or you have to put, if it's the incumbent, would have to deposit that sum of money with the township.
It's almost like an escrow, so for these people who haven't gotten the replacements,
So you're gonna get
we
the.
would be in charge of getting them out to people, basically.
You're going to get the replacement, either the incumbent's going to put the money up front, and it'll happen over, let's say, 4 or 5 years for the length of the contract, or if it's a new bidder that wins based on all the other factors, they're going to have to,
So if it's a new bidder, they're coming in and providing new carts no matter what. What I'm unclear about is if it's the incumbent, why would we be in the middle and taking in escrow? Because at the moment, they're not our carts, they never were our carts. If Mascaro didn't win the bid, they would take all the carts with them and actually have the opportunity to reuse them with other customers. So it's not like, I think the way I kind of look at it is this is part of the service. The service is not to give toters to each resident. That's not what's happening here. Toters are provided as part of the service. The toters remain with the property as part of the service. And if the incumbent or whoever wins the bid leaves at some point, they take the toters with them. So to me, it's all just part of the, of the process, of the whole process.
Well, my perspective is I think John is onto a good idea. We break the cost of the toters out, and we call it vendor lock-in. And as a vendor, we try to do it. We try to lock ourselves in by having like the toter there, except it's in software, it's other things. But basically then you make it hard to switch because you make the switching costs higher. So something like John suggested where you make them put into our escrow account the switching cost basically, which is the cost to replace the toters. Because if we stick with Mascaro, we don't want to throw away good toters. We just want to replace the ones that need to be replaced. So you figure out the cost of the toters. That way, the bids are even, across the board, but Mascaro gives us that money, or if it's them, because they're the ones where this issue would apply.
But it's got to be the same number for everybody.
Or could they give us a price per toter and not give us an escrow? Because if it's the current incumbent, at least we're making the decision on the price per toter. Versus having an escrow, because I understand that, nobody wants to give us $1 million to sit on for 5 years either, like that isn't, and sorry, I'm not on speaker, but I could get why nobody would want to give us, like Mascaro wouldn't want to give us a ton of money to sit on, but could you also do it to where it's just they price what per toter cost would be, and then at least we have that number to compare across? Would that be legit or not?
Well, the price per toter is, they're not going to replace, if they are the low bidder, they're not going to replace all their toters.
No, but at least we know that their price per toter is 50 and this one's price per toter is 60, And then if they have to replace them all, it kind of, it seems like the only other way to equalize it is at least we have a number.
Through the, yeah, that's what I'm about to get at. Through the bid, you can ask for whatever information you want. If you want to say, give us the price per toter, you can do that, but you still have to have a basis on which you're going to award the bid.
I think John's idea hits everything.
Well, the other possibility is require that all the toters be replaced during the term of the contract. So it's either initially with a new bidder, or it's during the term of the contract with the incumbent.
So they price it with replacement, and then maybe there's some sort of methodology that people can call it
It's
in.
not an immediate.
Like,
Yeah, so
Having
maybe
the residents
the,
pay for something that they're not getting.
maybe the requirement then is, I'm just picking a number, that no toter may be older than 3 years old. And at that point, you put everyone on the same playing field, you're making sure that the toters are getting replaced regularly. Is that an option?
Well, it's an option, it's a mathematical option, but the reality is that these toters probably last a great deal longer than 3 years.
I was just picking 3 out of,
Okay, but let's say it was 10, because, then you don't have an inventory of toters, and you don't know what the ages are on the toters that are in inventory. So you don't have any way to enforce that or to even attack that issue. Because, the escrow piece, I'm troubled, John, by, these are not our toters, and the new ones are not our toters either. And so why are we getting into a financial, arrangement with regard to the purchase of toters?
It's just to guarantee, it's a way to guarantee that you get all new toters. But I like the other idea better than that idea, to require that they all be replaced during the term of the contract. So that way everybody's got a budget for replacement toters, including mascara if they win the bid, during the 5-year term of the contract. So you'll get them all replaced.
But that kicks the can down the road, because as a vendor, I'd go ahead and I'd delay that, and then right before the next contract renewal, it's like, wait, we just gave you all new toters. We have the same issue. And actually, we would be putting more money into, would be increasing the margin of Mascaro if they won by doing that, assuming all the bids were roughly equal.
I don't follow that logic, because they're going to replace all the toters at the end of 5 years under this scenario.
It's the time value of money.
So then, therefore, they are back at ground zero, just as everyone else is on the next contract.
we have a 5-year option with 2 years.
They have to replace in the next contract all the toters again for 5 years, or whoever wins does. So I don't know where that is not, I'm not sure that 5 years is and again, I'm thinking of this more about a reasonable life and how many toters are going to get tossed because they had to get tossed and go into landfill. And I'm not opposed to seeking some equity or, equitability in this, but I'm really reluctant to put into the bid the requirement that thousands of toters that are still useful get thrown away. I'm just not comfortable with that. So if you want to, mathematically, John, the schedule of replace them all in 5 years and everybody has the same equal term, that works well. It doesn't address the condition that many of these that are going to be taken off the street are going to be still of some value. Now, I guess I could assume from the standpoint of business that the vendor will keep them, and where a township doesn't require him to give new ones out, he can use those again.
yeah, replacement.
Do they get recycled? Why would do we know that they end up in a landfill?
I think that plastic probably doesn't. Do we know if the contract has a stipulation that they take the toters back? I actually never asked that question. Like, what happens if they don't?
Well, they own them.
They do own them. Okay, so that's what I didn't know. Okay.
They own the toters.
Okay. So they conceivably would, and then conceivably reuse
And
them.
if I were them, I would take them back, and I would, assuming they're functional, recycle them with other customers.
That's what I would assume.
Assuming the other customers would allow that.
Well, if they're functional.
But we wouldn't. I mean, if-
We wouldn't, but also the incumbent does more than just municipal contracts. They do individual pickup as well.
So did we get past that one on the five, having some sort of stimulation that kind of equalizes it and has that replacement for the existing incumbent, but prices the toters in there?
I'm struggling with how to structure that, you know.
Yeah.
I would structure it. I would structure it to break out for the bids, have the cost of toters as a separate line item for each of them.
Okay.
And have the cost of services be just the cost of the services without the amortized toter cost, baked into it. And then, if we go with a new bidder, they replace all the toters because Mascaro owns them. If we, and it all gets paid by the monthly bill of the consumer. And if it is the incumbent, then the cost of the toters that they, put in there, which basically normalizes the bids and lets us look at just the cost of the service, we would basically take that into escrow in some form or fashion so that that money, that way that money doesn't stay as extra profit for them, but basically comes back to benefit the residents.
How is the bid going to be awarded?
The bid gets awarded based on the whole number.
Bid gets awarded based on the whole number, but if...
Breaking that out does absolutely nothing.
No, it does, because then we don't force to equalize the bid. We're not forcing the incumbent, if they win, to replace all the toters. They're only going to replace the ones that are damaged, and the difference in funds goes to the benefit of the residents.
Isn't there an inequity in this, though, with the bid itself, though? We're forcing one bidder to come up with a large cash valuation that they hand over to the township as compared to other ways that other bidders or other haulers might have then already assumed the cost of new materials?
That I think you could address financially through the cost of money.
They'd have to post that letter of credit, which would be the cost of it. You gotta have the same cost of the bid.
I know John recommended it. I'm not sure I want to get into the business of holding large amounts of money from any private entity and for any particular reason. We kept the other escrow at 10,000 because that was a reasonable amount to utilize and not excessive that we would even have to carry forward and account for also. I think we go down a slippery slope if we start doing that.
If we go with the other idea that they have to replace throughout the course of the contract, though, we wouldn't hold it in escrow.
Right.
Yeah, and then I'm with you, I don't know that I necessarily think that's fair either, to Jason's point. So it's just, my biggest concern again is just having an equal playing field for all of the people that are presenting and being able to kind of apples to apples the bid and how do we get there? And it sounds like we're close. Do you guys need to do more kind of conversation?
Well, I think we need a consensus on what the board wants. I mean, we could try to come up with something.
I mean, you start it with, everybody has to replace all new toters at the beginning of the contract, so it seems to me the only way to really massage that is to spread that out. Ms. Garrett can, if they're the incumbent, if they're the low bidder, then they're still gonna have to replace them, they're just not gonna have to do it right up front. The other bidders will have to do it up front, so there's still some, it's not exactly the same requirements, but it's just that they get more time to do it.
And how does, if we just say that they must provide a new toter throughout the length of the contract, how does that not put everyone in an equal playing field?
The other thing,
Time value of money.
well,
Yes, I agree, but that aside, they all have to do the replacement at some point.
and bear in mind that BFI, let's say they win it, they may be bringing in used toters. So,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be new, I mean, I don't know that it has to be a clean, brand-new one, it's just toters. I mean, so conceivably, and I don't know, some vendors may use, the cans that somebody just has.
Well, that's a material difference, and I think that's important, because what I
Yeah.
heard last time was new, because there was comments about, this, how some of them look. Now, if you just strike the word new,
Toters, yeah.
then I have no idea what other bidders have. They could have 5,000 toters just sitting around from former customers or whatever. They may have to order some, I don't know. That's certainly by striking the word new. I'm not gonna say it's an even playing field, but
I'm not sure if I would go for that. I mean, we're a pretty decent township, I would want to have, I would hate to have secondhand toters brought in here that don't look good either.
well, I understand. I would also say that after a few months of use, a new toter, I'm not sure you can tell the difference anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, and I want to think about sustainability, so I mean, it's, if striking new, because like I said, conceivably, if they don't have a contract and they like a set toter, they're going to have to do that. And we do have in the bid later that there is a replacement
Well, that's in there.
clause in there, right?
Yeah,
That if
they're
they
required to
don't, so that
replace
we've
it if
improved them.
necessary, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So repeat the compromise then for me, please.
Well, if I'm hearing things, the compromise would be removing the word new, which is exactly what it was before.
I'm fine with that.
So,
But we'd have to still have a stipulation that if a toter is not serviceable, that it gets replaced.
The language is already in there that covers that,
Yep. But we've heard complaints from residents that that's not happening
And
currently.
I did ask staff about that, and the feedback that I got was, yes, it does happen, and yes, they do take their time on occasion, but eventually they do it.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's a standard we want to shoot for, but it is, so we're aware of those issues.
Is there a penalty for not doing it in a timely manner?
There actually isn't in the penalties that I put out there, but I certainly could add one if the board wants.
I think that would be a good incentive.
I think that's a good idea.
So can we just take out the word timely and define the
Yep.
timeline? It has to be definite. Is it 10 days? Is it?
72 hours, that's three business days or 5 business days?
I give 2 weeks. A couple weeks.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
We're going to say 14 days. And a
$100.
$100 penalty.
And just a couple of things in that area in the prior one. So the replacement request needs to be based on something. I'm just tired of this one, or, I spilled paint inside it and I don't like the looks of it anymore. So we can't allow that kind of request to be part of the process, although I'm not denying that there could have been some delay on reasonable ones, but there needs to be something. And with regard to the vendor question about, well, we will not require new, we probably want to have at least minimal language that says that the toters must be in full working condition, without cracks or leaks, and some
That's the
description.
issue, the functionality of the wheels and then the no cracks.
You don't need to have it,
Yeah.
but something that says these need to be, in fully serviceable condition, without cracks or wheels. Yeah. And that would be also a definition then of replacement, because if now one is cracked or broken, that would be replaced.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm
And
fine.
then that way it's not branding. That way they're not pricing brand new shiny ones, they can reuse theirs, and that should make the bids a little more equal.
And lower.
All right. Moving on to the 11th comment, not reading the whole thing. It was about tires. And when I talked to everyone about this and, internally, we agreed with the comment that tires are not a recyclable and that people should be disposing them in other manners. So we did in the draft before you strike tires. The 12th comment, we did not address that. We didn't have any quantifiable way of dealing with that, and so we just left that alone. We have no information about how big of a problem that is, but it seems that that is something which is not, it can't be that huge of a problem because we don't hear about that much. I'm sure it happens on occasion. And for everyone listening in, that's dealing with people who are moving out of a residence and stack up a whole bunch of trash. So we left that one alone.
Was that in the current contract?
No. I'd be preserving the status quo.
This description could edge over toward the bulk pickup area, couldn't it?
So,
You had, cut up a whole bunch of carpet, and you replaced it, and you brought them out in properly sized pieces,
So no-
and you called for a bulk pickup. Would that not be similar to this?
So a bulk pick'em is for a specific bulky item. This is just for an excessive amount of trash related to a move-out.
Or some construction.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's fine. I would only note, without putting in the bid, that we should then have our code enforcement with regard to, home occupancy and also building permits, make them aware that piling the stuff up on the street is not acceptable.
Yep, we can, I mean, any reputable contractor should have a dumpster there and,
Well, yeah,
we can certainly work
but
with.
that's not part of the bid issue, that's just
No, we
a
can
process
certainly work with
issue.
whomever, and I agree, people should not, it should not be the responsibility, of the trash hauler to clean out an entire home. We all agree, and we can certainly work with whomever it is.
And I think that's part of our education and communication policy too, is, making sure people know, because I think the situation is there where it's been done, so people just expect it. And because we're changing the parameters of pickup, we definitely, it's in our best interest to communicate this, probably in the next newsletter and even before the contract's awarded. Here's what will likely change, because we are changing some things. So I think, when is the next newsletter going out? Does anybody know offhand?
Sorry, no, off the top of my head.
All right. Maybe in January, around Christmas, we may want to put something out.
It's probably not going to be ready in time, and also, we have to have a awarded bid and know exactly what we're doing, because in here, it could be a different vendor. You could go with the cart contents only model, in which that problem totally goes away because you're only dealing with what's in the cart. So I think you have to know what, you award the bid first and get an agreement prior to saying what the changes are.
Okay, well, we know bulk pickup is changing, right? Because we're not even bidding a weekly option, for example.
Correct.
That's what I was thinking. The things that we know will probably be different.
Yeah.
Again, I was just thinking change management, starting that conversation.
I agree 100% to keep getting the word out as soon as we
Yeah.
know the details.
So
Yeah.
not the details, but just here's what we're
Yep.
up to. Okay, thank you.
And Greg, just for my clarification, on the suggestion at the last item, they were suggesting that we put something into the bid saying that move-out trash and contractor trash is out of scope? Was that their suggestion?
Yes,
Okay, but we're not putting that into the bid.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how you would quantify that, and how would you get?
But it wasn't in scope in the current contract,
Correct, so it's.
so it's not a change.
No, it's not, we're preserving the status quo.
Stepping briefly and hopefully quickly back to page 9, scope of work, number H, bulk item pickup on demand. And I think we referenced this elsewhere, but if the bidder looks at that by itself and on demand, does that mean that I'm going to call you and you're going to come and get it today? I mean,
It's within a reasonable time frame.
I think somewhere else, and I'm sorry, I lost the note, it said once a month or once every...
So here's so as part of the base bid,
Yeah,
you will get a bulk pickup once a month. However, there is one separate bid for on-demand, which means that if you already used your once a month and you need more, how much is it going to cost me to call you guys and come and pick it up?
that's
So
what
it's a
this is.
completely separate thing.
Okay.
It's an additional service above and beyond, should a resident choose to want it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
It's a fee for service if they use it.
Yep. All right, so The feedback that I have was, in addition to adding the ordinances, which we're going to do at the back, it's the 14-day time frame to replace a non-functioning toter with a $100 fine, and then ensuring that the language is in there about the toter having to be functional, and if it's non-functional, that's the cue to replace it. Okay. Was there anything else? You trust me to make those changes myself and pass it tonight? Thank you.
All right, so can we then have a motion to approve the trash bid document as discussed and amended with notes from our interim township manager, Greg Schuster?
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience? All right, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Item 2D, consideration of flood mitigation grant administration services agreement. And interim township manager Greg Schuster has that information. Greg?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board, after Hurricane Ida came through, expressed a strong desire to participate in a program through FEMA, which would allow for the purchase, acquisition, and demolition of houses that are in flood-prone areas. This, in a discussion with our emergency management coordinator and looking at everything, we decided that the best avenue to help this along was to use the services of a grant coordinator. We did, through residents that were already in contact with her, as well as neighboring municipalities, come across the proposal, the person that's in the proposal in front of you. You can see her experience in various areas related to flood mitigation and the grants that she has gone after. The proposal, if you choose to engage her, would be to charge $100 per hour, which would not exceed $2,000 per home that could potentially be involved in this program. Additionally, for a property to be involved in this program, it would have to get appraised, and we are pegging the cost at approximately $500. So right now, we have at most 13 properties which would be involved in this program. We don't expect that all 13 will continue. In fact, some of them may not continue because there's some ongoing conversation about whether or not this would, at the moment, it does not include the raising, as in the raising the elevation of a property, only the demolition. That may change, though, as we get farther along. So we have some that are interested in the raising portion, but not necessarily the demolition. So doing the quick math of $2,000 maximum per house, and the $500 appraisal times 13 maximum, that's a maximum of $32,500. If we got the grant would cover the entire cost of that. But we would, of course, have to put the money out up front to pay the consultant to do the work to get the grant.
I have a question on the number of houses. Is the number of house limit mentioned in her agreement, or how do we tie her agreement to the expected maximum scope?
It's in her cover letter of November 2nd, where it says in the second paragraph, not to exceed $2,000 per each home.
And my question was on the number of homes.
Oh, no, the number of homes is not listed in there.
Okay,
We control that,
We
though.
control
Yeah.
that.
okay,
Yeah, no, these homes can't jump in at their own free will.
got it. Okay, thank you.
My only, go ahead. My only question was perhaps to Mr. Woodrow out there on Zoom. Good evening, Tim. Just wondering if you might have worked with this individual before in any of your capacities.
The name is not familiar to me, Jason, but certainly is a very specialized program. And having someone with, a daily knowledge of the process, I believe would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Surely.
Did we check references? Actually, that's a good point, Jason. I mean, I know that she's worked with Upper Providence, but they haven't closed out one yet. So have we checked another township where she's been working?
I haven't personally. I'd have to check with our emergency management coordinator if he has, but I haven't done that personally, no.
That would be my only request. I mean, I absolutely think that's a great idea, and especially if we can recoup that cost back. The other benefit is it takes these homes and preserves them, or these lots and preserves them as open space for the community, and we wouldn't build on them again. And so that provides that kind of safety net and allowing our streams to recover as well.
So perhaps we make the motion contingent upon the manager's confidence after the vetting process that moving forward is advisable.
I'm comfortable with that if you are.
Okay. I would make that motion then.
I would second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. One additional question. Did we, although Tim says it's a very narrow field, and I'm not surprised at that, did we actually entertain, applications from any other consultants? Were there any others available, or?
We did not. I'm not aware of any other consultants. We, of course, could have gone out to bid, but because this is a time-sensitive issue, and because she's already working with neighboring municipalities and has a set of experience, I thought it'd be appropriate to just go ahead and move forward. I will note that this is a professional service, so it is not required to go out to bid. You certainly could, but it would potentially slow things down.
Okay, and the second question then, you mentioned it briefly, but we do not have the expense for this in the 2022 budget. We hope and expect that we will get compensated by FEMA, but there is no certainty in that, so therefore we are going to be obligated to spend money in 2022. So how can we plug that into the 2022 budget that is now pending?
So there's two things that you can do. The first thing is amend the budget at your next meeting. However, that may not be possible because once you advertise a preliminary budget, you have certain restrictions, and it's very hard to increase line items. You can decrease them as much as you want, but increasing has to be within certain percentages. You, of course, could just warn another preliminary budget. In that case, you'd have to satisfy the 20-day requirement, have a third meeting in December. What I would recommend, though, is because we don't know the timing of when we're going to have to put out the money and how much it's going to be, is to do nothing at this point. You can do a supplemental appropriation next year and amend the budget. That's a very common thing that is done and would be perfectly acceptable, in my opinion.
Okay, so a supplementary allocation would be
You do
the
a
best
budget amendment, which you can do after
would
the
not,
first
which
3
would not
months.
affect the pending budget in terms of its content?
No.
Okay, I'm good with that. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, go ahead, Kara.
Just remind me, I've heard there's a limit on reimbursement, I believe, for the homes, or no? Is it 350,000?
That I'm not aware of.
Okay, I've
sorry.
heard it floating around. I guess I can ask her when they hire her, but, okay.
And if FEMA buys a home out, who becomes the owner of that property? Is it,
FEMA doesn't, we do.
or
The local government.
local government? But then we would be putting the funds out to buy it, but then FEMA would reimburse us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be on us to go ahead and acquire the property, demolish the structure, and then seek the reimbursement. Well, at that point, it would be approved, so we would know we would get the money, but we would have to lay out the money first.
Okay.
And then get reimbursed.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Comments or questions from the public?
Kathy Byer, Arcola Road. Quick question on the elevation portion of it. You said that they may be doing it in the future. Who makes that decision? Is that strictly FEMA, or is the township involved in it? Excuse me, can I take my mask off? I'm speaking, okay, thank you.
So it is FEMA. We have expressed an interest that we want to go ahead and look at the ones that can be elevated, but FEMA is not including it at this time. So we're not holding it back. It's FEMA.
Okay, so they make the decision?
Yes.
But you've already applied, I mean, do you actually have to apply for that aspect of it? I know on the application, there's boxes that you check, you know, whether it's elevation, buyout, or relocate.
Yeah, as far as I know, the only thing that's open right now to apply for is for the acquisition and demolition portion of it. That's not to say the other thing won't open up. The only thing we've really done so far is submit a letter of intent. But we have not submitted a formal application. That's what the grant consultant's going to do. But it would be, if FEMA opens up that possibility, we're certainly going to move forward with that.
Yeah. So when you say you sent in a letter of intent, in that letter of intent, was the intent for the relocation aspect?
It was just to participate in the program. It was a form letter.
Okay, all right. I'm just concerned about that, because that's what I'm very interested in and praying for. And I want to make sure that they're aware that you have property owners that are interested in that. And, and when you say as far as you're aware that they're not doing it, like, I like to have something more concrete, like, well, I guess the grant manager might be able to help us with that, to say, well, who's making the decision? Who do we reach out to, like, for appeals, or, you know, like, can we appeal, and those type of things?
That is what one of the fundamental activities for the grant manager would be,
Just find out
which,
who's making the decisions up there.
assuming this goes smoothly, I would imagine she'd be available in probably a month or maybe a little less. Mike, did you have something?
And to other folks who are listening, there is an information session, which I believe will be attended by FEMA representatives, if not conducted by FEMA representatives, at the Collegeville Fire Department on Saturday. I believe it's 9:30 a.m. They're probably going to be the ones who are going to know this a little bit better than us, because frankly, they're the ones who are making most of the decisions.
Okay, well, good, that's, yeah. The other Mike, he told me about that, but I wasn't putting them both together. You're right, that probably will help.
So Mike, we have contact information for the 13 properties that are affected. Can we reach out to them tomorrow to make sure they're aware of this meeting?
I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
I received an email.
Yeah, I think Mike sent an email.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys been really wonderful. I want to thank everybody too for that, you know, and the township board, your commitment. You guys really deserve a lot of credit. Like, this is past my bedtime. I don't even know how you're staying awake and doing, but just the commitment that you have, and it seems like you have so much knowledge and you're really involved, and I appreciate that. I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but I see a lot of other questions from people on this about the election. Do we know who won, or no? Is that
That's not a topic that we're discussing.
Okay, so I guess the answer is we don't know yet.
The election has not yet, the election,
I'm not trying to be controversial.
I'll only say the election has not yet been certified, so
Okay.
therefore it's not final.
Well, congratulations to whoever it may be, and, you know, I'm thankful for that.
You can go on the county site to get the
Okay.
latest.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Next on the agenda is item 2E, authorization to advertise the appointment of the 2022 reorganization meeting of BBD as the Township Auditor for the year 2021. And Interim Township Manager Greg Schuster has that one as well. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the proposed public notice. This is required by the second-class Township Code to formally appoint the CPA that will do the audit for 2021. I will note that this is part of a 3-year contract, and this would be the last year, so I would anticipate going out to bid next year for the 2022 audit and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve advertising the appointment of BBD for next year?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments?
I guess my only question is, I know there was a delay in the sewer audit. That wasn't BDD's doing, that was the sewer authority was the cause of that delay?
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
No, it's actually, it was the state
Okay, it was a different one.
auditor, so the sewer authorities actually moved away from utilizing them.
Ah, okay, I wasn't sure if they had the same auditor. All right, good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Bill? No. Okay. Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is item 2F, award of equipment rental contract, and Interim Township Manager Greg Schuster has that one. Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did go out to bid, as we do every single year, for equipment rentals. Mr. Kinney was the only one that responded. B&M Landscape and M&M Landscaping were both contacted, but chose not to submit quotes. So we're asking this evening for you to go ahead and approve the schedule that was provided. I will note that this is on an as-needed basis. This does not commit the township to any minimum at all.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the rental contract?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board?
Only a brief one to say that Mr. Kenny's both a township resident and his business is located here, and part of the benefit of utilizing his services is that although it doesn't commit us to anything, when we've needed his services, he and his equipment have been readily available. So it's a good move. Thank you.
And I would say I support the use of local businesses.
No, I would echo that endorsement. Questions or comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Opposed? And the motion carries. Item 2G, and the last item on the agenda, for those of you keeping score at home, discussion of zoning appeal applications Z21-24, Z21-25, and Z-2126 with regard to zoning applications for 4th Street, 5th Street, and 6th Street. And our solicitor, John Rice, has that information. John?
Okay, these are three properties that we call movie lots that were previously in front of the zoning hearing board. There was appeals on denials for what was proposed at the time was a manufactured house. The county court basically approved the appeals, and now there's a new applicant that wants to build a normal stick-built house on the property. They need new zoning hearing board relief. And we've been seeing a lot of these lots that are from a 1929 plan that's been recorded in Norristown since then, that are basically have the vested rights to do something. So my recommendation is the board authorize my office to participate. There's questions that need to be asked of what's proposed. Are there any improvements, or where are the utilities coming from? So that's what's in front of the board tonight, just to authorize my office to participate in the three zoning hearing board proceedings. They're virtually identical, but, and they're all dealing with these small 6,000 square foot movie lots.
Okay, can I have a motion to authorize our solicitor to attend the zoning board hearing regarding these items?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments?
Other than just being in favor of this, I know those neighbors there have concerns because they're such small lots and they have flooding issues over there. And so this gives us an opportunity to at least weigh in, because these zoning hearing board meetings are a separate legal entity. So, for those who aren't aware.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Executive session, November 9th.
Just brought to my attention, I missed the earlier meeting, and on November 9th, there was an executive session to discuss personnel matters. So I'll just note that for the record. Moving on then to announcements, and before I go through those, I will note that our student representative from Mafacton, Uma Barat, is not with us tonight because she is at the National Honor Society induction, I believe. And so we gave her dispensation from this to go there. And congratulations to her, and we'll look forward to noting that to her personally. Further announcements, zoning hearing board meeting that we just discussed a moment ago is scheduled for November 23rd at 7 p.m. The Caring and Sharing Holiday Food Drive is underway. Supermarket gift cards, monetary donations, and non-perishable food items can be dropped off at the Township building weekdays from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. For online donations and more information, visit www.lptrec.com. Also, the 13th Annual Community Tree Lighting and Santa's Winter Wonderland is scheduled for Friday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. here in the Township Complex. A very popular event, especially for the kids and the families. So looking forward to that. Comments and other business? Any comments and other business? Jason?
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, the library board met this past Monday. The library continues to provide awesome services to our township. One of the issues with the pandemic is they have not been able to hold their normal fundraising events both in the spring and in the fall. So one of the ways that they are looking to recoup some funding or fundraising is to do basket raffles. So they will be holding a holiday themed basket raffle coming up in the next several weeks. So I encourage everybody in the township to take chances on the baskets that they will be putting together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Gary?
Yeah, real quick, the sewer, in my role as sewer authority liaison, the sewer authority sent over some information for us to post on our website related to stormwater and basically, flooding and the like. And I would encourage residents to look at it when it's posted out there. And it just talks about things like valves that you can put on to keep storm surges from coming up into your house if you have like a washer down in the basement. So there's certain things people can, certain actions people can take to help out in that regard. Also, I had given a presentation on stormwater in the October meeting. I'll provide that to you, Greg, so you can post it out there as well, the PowerPoint. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Kara?
You already announced the park programs, thank you. So the food drive, and there will be if you miss Thanksgiving, there will be another opportunity for Christmas. We've got a mitten tree that will be up, or a tree that will have gifts that people can take to donate. I know people enjoy that, so it'll be in the lobby. And looking forward to the tree lighting. It is going to be more on the scale that we've been used to. So very excited about that, to have the community come out. And it's going to be starting at 6:30, just as a reminder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have one other thing to add, which is encouraging and worth noting. We have it on fairly good authority that there is a strong interest in a business to purchase the TD Bank at Park and Egypt Road. And it's a retail brand that we're all familiar with. And hopefully it'll go through, and we'll have that long-standing empty building filled with something that could be of great value and benefit to the township. So that's all I can say at this point, but hopefully in the next few weeks we might be able to give you some better information. But it's encouraging to know that one of these long-standing empty buildings has potentially found an occupant that would be very welcome here in town. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I had one more thing to mention. The township applied for a DCED, a Department of Community and Economic Development Multi-Modal Transportation Grant for our ongoing work with the intersection at Park, Crawford, and Eagleville Roads. And tomorrow, The CFA, the Commonwealth Financial Authority, meets to conduct the awarding of funds for various projects throughout the Commonwealth. They were supposed to meet earlier this week, and they too had technical difficulties for their meeting. So we are very hopeful that funding will come through tomorrow, so please stay tuned. Sorry about that, thank you.
No, thank you. And I think that would just about complete the funding requirements if we were awarded that, isn't that right?
That would indeed, and send us to be able to start looking into construction once we are able to finalize all of the plans and acquire the final easement. So we are getting closer and closer to shovel in the ground.
So can we have white smoke out of the township building tomorrow morning if this comes?
I will let everyone know as soon as I hear anything. I will note, though, that we have been having regular status meetings, and things have been moving along with the planning and engineering for that project. The funding is obviously the missing piece at this point.
Okay, good news, thank you. Okay, announcements, comments, and other business, courtesy of the floor. Anyone wish to speak? Kathy, please, go. Whomever, or both coming, okay.
You get the two sisters. I'm Kathy Byer, Arcola Road. Rose Kazur, Arcola Road. I'm going to start with just a question first. Did the township receive any FEMA money for stormwater management yet? I mean, after Ida and from FEMA, and I know you had talked. I heard about that. Have you?
So no, that is, first of all, it's not for stormwater management. We will be receiving reimbursement for expenditures for Ida, but that's not for stormwater management. It's to repair damage that occurred and also other resources that the township had to expend.
And what was the last part? And the other what?
And resources that the township had to expend, whether it be labor or other things involving
Right.
our response to Hurricane Ida.
But do you have budgeted for stormwater issues though? Not, I mean, besides FEMA. I don't know if I'm talking. Well, and then I'll get to my point then. Something, I'm not sure that if all the board members are aware of this. Years ago, I have a stormwater issue. So just, years ago, when the development above us on our, it's a Barrington Road development, was put in, they, like Township, I mean, Alan Myers did the construction, but the township was involved with all that, collected all the road runoff, the road runoff, collection of it, and ran pipes underneath Arcola Road, stormwater pipes, and on all the properties along Arcola Road, they continued the pipes under Arcola Road and then went all the way down, on private property, went down to the creek and expelled in the creek. And for some reason, nobody knows why, because this was in the 70s, 72, on my property and joining my sister's property, they stopped the pipe. They didn't continue the pipe all the way down to the creek. So there's a pipe going under Arcola Road that collects a lot of water and stops and just dumps on our property. Well, through the years, once I became owner, because it was my parents' place way back then, and then transferred ownership, I would call the township, in a panic when I was being flooded, because it was bad. When it jumps out of the ditch, when it gets too heavy, because there's a ditch now. A long time ago, before this, it was a natural swale, which would just trickle sort of down. But, once it became collected and engineered and piped, the force of water that comes out of a pipe and stuff. So I would call the township and say, please come out and see this, I'm being flooded. And they would send someone out from Public Works, and they would look at it, and then they kind of would just blow me off. And more or less it was, we don't have money to fix it. It's your property, that type of thing. And then I would stop and let it go in a couple years. So, not to make a long story short, but I would kind of just give up, And now recently, it has become really bad, like really bad. I mean, I think, I don't know if some are aware that, I had to demo part of my house because of black mold. And a lot of that was coming from jumping over the ditch and coming underneath my house. And then in the process, then my husband got ill, and he passed away from cancer. And so I'm left with a house. I have a house there. And I don't want to, I want to rebuild, and I cannot rebuild, I don't want to rebuild with an existing problem. So, in the last couple years, my sister and her husband got involved and started helping too, because it's getting really bad. Like I said, I mean, it's really bad. It's not just a private issue either, but it's mostly a private issue, I would say, because the township's pipes going onto our property, but it does affect the creek banks a lot too.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I interrupt for a moment. This is, there's a limit with
Yeah.
respect to
So
courtesy of floor.
So I'm done my 3 minutes, giving you history. I wanted to give some history, just a little bit of, what this has been like, for years. And then Mary's going to do her 3 minutes. Her husband couldn't come, so he wrote a letter, and she's just going to read that. And then we also have a letter from DEP to pass out. That I could give you. And then next time we'll do this as an agenda item. I did call Greg. I don't know if you got that message. I think you did return it.
I did return your call.
Yeah, and then we never got back to each other, and I apologize for that. All right,
Go ahead, Mary.
go ahead. Here, look, Kath, here's the rest. Okay, we'll go real quick. So I know, apologize, because it really needs to be an agenda item, but anyway. So my husband, Fred Kazor, who is an engineer, has been working with the township and PADEP for several years. He has worked really hard on resolving the Arcola Road stormwater runoff that has and continues to erode the Kazor and Buyer properties. After an on-site meeting with the township and the Montgomery County Conservation District, which did not resolve the issue, it resulted in my husband, he wrote this letter, initiating a meeting held at the DEP office in Norristown on 1/23/2020 with PADEP and the Army Corps of Engineers representatives. This resulted in an on-site visit by DEP's Ms. Krista Brown, Environmental Protection Compliance Specialist, on February 8th, 2020, and here are her findings. Okay, so here's the report. I'll quickly read that. If I can open it. So on February 8th, this is written by her, on February 8th, 2020, Krista Brown, EPA Compliance Specialist for the Clean Water MS4 program, investigated a stormwater complaint regarding 3572 Arcola Road. The complainant states that stormwater from a municipal system is being discharged onto his his neighbor's property, Kathy, that stormwater is causing erosion and property damage. The Arcola Road is a municipal road and is therefore part of the municipality's municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4. It appears there are a minimum of 3 inlets that capture stormwater and eventually discharge onto 3572 Arcola Road. The complainant has stated that in recent years the erosion has accelerated. 2 possible reasons for this are there appear to be some newer homes across the street which could be adding to an increase in stormwater runoff. The last couple of years we have seen an increase in quick storms, Ida, that drop a large amount of stormwater, which would cause an increase in the erosive forces coming from the discharge. Since this ditch is conveying the municipal stormwater, it too is considered part of their MS4 and needs to be maintained as required by the municipality's MS4 permit. According to the complainant, he has approached the township in an effort to work out a solution. However, because the ditch is on private property, the township was not interested in addressing the problem. The ditch appears to be primarily formed from the stormwater collected on Arcola Road. Stormwater. There is approximately 600 to 700 feet between the initial point of discharge from Arcola Road to the outfall at the Perkiomen Creek. The ditch is approximately 2 to 3 feet deep and 2 to 3 feet wide at the initial point of discharge. However, the further away from the discharge point, the shallower the channel. Near the outfall to the Perkiomen Creek, you can identify the path the stormwater takes, but there is not a defined channel. It would be expected that over time a channel would eventually form. The complainant would like to see a pipe installed from Arcola Road to the Perkiomen Creek to prevent further erosion and property damage. However, there are other possible solutions. Since this is part of the municipality's MS4 and since it is located on private properties, recommend the township and the 2 property owners come together to find a solution that will work for all parties.
Okay, so, and to continue.
Mary, excuse me, Mary,
Yeah,
you're
It's
well
done.
over your time limit here. How much more do you have?
3 paragraphs. Okay, real quick. So since that report was issued, my husband has had further meetings with DEP and the township to arrive at an amicable agreement that would resolve the erosion issues. DEP says they cannot enforce the stormwater compliance issues regarding retroactive projects, that the property owners, the township must work together to resolve the issue. After numerous conversations with DEP, permits are not required to install the pipe as long as there are no disturbance in the floodway, which is approximately 50 to 100 feet from the creek. This was also confirmed by Montgomery County Conservation. But here's the key, okay? If the pipe were to run to the creek, which is our preference, a PA DEP permit would be required. For the permit to be completed, the township would need to complete the stormwater intake section of the DEP permit. That's all's needed from you. And since the stormwater intake is from Arcola Road, which is a township road, the homeowners cannot be responsible for completing the stormwater intake section of the DEP permit because we are not responsible for the water intake of the entire township road. Therefore, we are requesting the township complete the intake section of the DEP permit so we can proceed. We're also requesting a reasonable financial contribution to this project. Sorry, I went 100 miles an hour. But basically,
thank you.
he would do, you know, he's at a
What
standstill.
you're making the board aware of it, which is fine, that's your right, now the board knows about it, but we're not going to be able to resolve that
Got
for
it,
you tonight.
right.
And our township manager has reached out to you and not had a response, but we need to get our code enforcement and Mike and Tim Woodrow involved in a discussion about this so that you hopefully can get a resolution, but we can't do that for you here tonight.
Yeah, but what we're trying to do now is to open up another door, because we have met with Tim and Mike and the other township manager before, and we just end up getting a roadblock. So I think somebody just said, "What, did you ever go in front of the board?" I think it was on Living on Lower Providence. Did you ever just bring it, to public
All right,
awareness?
what the board will do
So
then...
that's what we're doing now.
The board then will ask, since you said that Tim and Mike already know about this, we'll ask them to give us a report so that we can better understand what's transpired and maybe get a response back to you in that regard.
We just need to work together on this. An issue has to be resolved. We can't be responsible for the township runoff. Okay, so we can't complete that part of the DEP permit.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
We can work together.
Thank you. We will look into it, and someone will get back to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Any other, Bill? Any other? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for.
Good night, everybody.